What do you do when you are the business? You can't just delegate your work. You can't ignore things that need to be done. And there's just like so much to do. And if you're like me, you started your own business because you wanted to do things that you were really interested in, things that you were excited about. And frankly, I'm kind of lucky because making videos like this, about how people work and how to visualize your work, this is actually what I like to do. Several years ago, I went down to Australia and I taught a bunch of classes with this guy, with David Dugan. And David works almost entirely with micro businesses, and most entirely inside of that with solopreneurs, like businesses of one person, or starting as one person and working their way up. And one of the things that David had said to me years ago was that the folks who were doing solopreneur work always got into it because they were driven to do something. And when they get into doing it, they suddenly find out that the world isn't what they were expecting. So in solopreneurs, we end up drowning in expectations. And what we want to do is we want to make those expectations visible. We want to see what's going on, and we want to be able to make the expectations manageable and make them yours. We won't get into any offensive ways of saying that, but you want to own that those tasks and get those tasks done. So solopreneurs are primarily overwhelmed. They have incredibly, when you're entering at unrealistic expectations about how much work you're actually going to end up doing, what you're actually going to be responsible for. And you have your expectations, your customers have their expectations, and then the business, independent of everything else, has its own expectations. So we end up buried in stuff, in people, in processes, in platforms, in personal work, personal life, and in what we call provision. And so I'm going to quickly try and go through these. So people are other people. So they're your customers, they're your suppliers, there's the people you're collaborating with. None of us work alone. We can't just go do some work and then magically pay ourselves for that work. We always have to have a customer or somebody out there. And people make decisions based on emotion. So they're always going to be buying whatever it is that you're giving them. They're going to be accepting whatever it is that you have to offer through some sort of emotional attachment. And that means that they're going to be calling you up and interrupting you in all sorts of emotional ways. Are you done yet? This doesn't work like I thought it was. How do I do this? Oh my God, that. And they'll get really emotional. And you're like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. I didn't think that my job as a graphic designer was going to be that I was going to run out every day and then have to like keep my clients glued together. And we're shocked when we find out that we do. And I know if you're watching this video that you've found yourself in that same situation. And the last two here are desires and promises. All of your customers, all the people that you work with, and you and your family, everyone has these desires, these things that they would like that would make their current state turn into a better future state. And there's something that you're going to do to get that. You're going to give them better clothes or some advice, or you're going to build a website for them, or you're going to give them some consulting, whatever it might be. You are a human being that is fulfilling the desires of these other people. All of those desires are based on emotion. And then you end up making promises to them. I'm going to do this by this date for this much money. And then you try and get that work done. And then they interrupt you by saying, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Maybe you should do it this way. Oh, I just have this little change here or there. So when we operate our own business, we see ourselves doing the fun part of the work, but what we don't see is us running around endlessly in this negotiation soup. Secondly is process. And process is workflow, the stuff that you think you're supposed to be doing every day. This is my real work, right? But then there's also marketing, because again, you need to be able to sell things to people in order to get work done. And so when you can build up a process, that's basically you creating a flow of work that isn't interrupting you, right? So if you don't know how you do things every day, then every day you have to come in and reinvent how you do things. So in subtle ways, you will build up a routine. You'll eat breakfast at a certain time, maybe you get some exercise, you come in and you check your email, then you figure out what you're going to do for the day, you write down a bunch of stuff in maybe a list or in a Kanban, and then off you go. You have a flow. So your flow, your workflow is your process. It is your standard work for how that works. And then you need to, oops, then you need to figure that flow out, and then you need to remember it once you do that. So a lot of your work is every day making sure that you're expending the least amount of effort to get the most amount of value out of your own time. And that means that you want to find software that works well and does what you want it to do. You want to find a desk that is comfortable for you. You want to figure out whether you need a trackball or whether you need a mouse or some other pointer device, but what is it that makes your workflow work exactly for you? And that means that you have to pay attention to what you do. And then when you do things every day, make sure that that repeated workflow is so smooth that when other things happen that are crazy, you still have the space to be able to deal with them. So, like in making these videos, I have to use Adobe Premiere. And I'm looking at options to get away from Adobe Premiere because it's so difficult to use. And it's not difficult to use because it's not powerful. It's difficult to use because it is just a really arcane system. And so I know that for my workflow, it would be better if I picked a system that had less features, but actually let my get my work done easier. So you want to set up your flow. Then platforms. I just mentioned Adobe. I swear to God, like this is the biggest problem for any micro business is just you come in one day and you start to type. And this morning I started to work and my wife couldn't get the printer to work. So we spent an hour debugging why the printer wouldn't work. And it was like for literally for no reason. We finally just rebooted the computer and the printer, and then they just magically worked again. But that happens all the time, especially with Adobe products. So you end up in a situation where you're expecting to come in and get into your flow, and then the software itself knocks you out of the flow. And it could be other things that knock you out of your flow, but the platforms that you choose are a big part of your work. Then there's personal stuff. So there's emotion again. And this is your emotion, right? And if you don't pay attention to your emotion, you will burn out. If you don't pay attention to your relationships, you will burn out. If you don't pay attention to the downtime that you need, you will burn out. And downtime is really important. I'm going to highlight it and make it a different color. And the reason the downtime is really important is because every minute of your day when you own a small business, you feel like you're not making money as part of your small business. And it's pretty rare that a micro business sets itself up in a way where it can perfectly say, you know what, I'm going to end the day at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock. I'm always going to take Fridays off. I'm never going to work on the weekends. Those are things that we say. But in real life, all of these other things show up all the time and get those things done. So like you might have a whole bunch of stuff doing to do over the week. And then at the end of the week, you have to deal with the provision. So provision, this last ticket here, I'm going to go ahead and turn it black so that we remember that it's here. Provision. This is administration. It is unexpected administration. It's redoing administration. It's talking about administration. It is all of the taxes, all of the forms, all of the insurance, all of the things that you need to do as a micro business to stay in business. And all of these things feel like extra work. What in lean they would call non-value added work. And they are, but What they actually are is they're the cost of doing business. They're just a reality, just like having to fix the printer was a reality. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. But as you can see, the provision is like you can't just it's something that you need to provide in order to stay in business. Okay? So, how do you create this in a way where it fits in with your flow, that you've selected platforms, hopefully, to make the pain of this administration as low as possible. And you create, again, standard work, which is stuff that you do every day to ensure that you're not falling behind, that you're not forgetting to do something, or you're not creating some future emergency that's going to take you away at a point where you actually do need to do, quote unquote, something important, right? So in the next video, we are going to talk about how we visualize work in a personal Kanban and in some other things, how we visualize work as a micro business, as a solopreneur, and we deal with these things in an elegant way.